Absolutely. And you make a good point. We have been outsourcing things to machines for a long time, but these machines have typically required full human operators in order for them to function. We've had different levels of intelligence inside pieces of hardware and software, but we are at a place where there is some autonomous capability now in the technology that exists around us. So not only is technology being used in places that are dangerous for humans, technology is also being used in places where humans excel very well. Knowledge work, complicated tasks, thinking, reasoning. These are not things that normally were outsourced successfully to machines by the broad general public, right? So only now do we have access. Everyone's got a smartphone. You have access to the world's intelligence for free at your fingertips, right? Like explaining that to somebody from the 1960s or 1970s, they're going to look at you all funny, like, what are you talking about? And what is this alien technology you're talking about? So, absolutely, we've outsourced things to machines before, but only now is it getting to a place where stuff that humans are really good at and is not dangerous can also be outsourced. I want to remind folks we have the book live on Amazon right now. You can go to aicultureblueprint.com. There's a button that says get the book. 10 bucks for paperback copies like these, right? They're going to come very quick. There is a Kindle version of the book if you like e-readers like myself. And there's absolutely an audio book for Audible that's coming out very soon in the next couple weeks. And then we're planning on doing a wider distribution and book tour happening later this spring. So I appreciate all of you that are on the live stream right now, all of you on Whatnot and TikTok. Love all you guys, my live family as well. You can buy it on Whatnot, get it on TikTok, or you can go straight to aicultureblueprint.com. It links you straight to the book. I would so appreciate it if you at least picked up a copy of the book, helps support us and gets me some of the attention to share this information wide and far. And if I can be of assistance for any of you guys as you're thinking about AI culture in your organizations, let me know. But wanted to plug that in, Pooja, so we can remind folks orders are open. Go crazy and check it out on Amazon. Love to hear feedback and reviews once you guys get through some of the chapters. That is a fantastic question. Does AI need and is it possible to enforce something like Asimov's three rules of robotics? I need to look up what that is. What is the Asimov three rules of robotics? Let's look it up real quick so I can answer easily. The three laws of robotics are a set rules that require a robot may not injure a human being through inaction, a robot must obey the orders, and a robot must protect its own existence. We are starting to get down this path of everyone talks about, and Doug, thank you for asking that question. We're getting down this path of this conversation around AGI, right? What does AGI mean? Everyone has different levels of definitions depending on who your shareholders are, depending on what your conditioning and training is, and where you've done research. The three laws of robotics essentially say a robot may not injure a human being through inaction or allow a human to come to harm. A robot must obey the orders, and a robot must protect its own existence, as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. This is probably the most challenging question as a society that we're going to have to answer. On one side of this spectrum and this question, it's, hey, how do we implement AI everywhere and give it autonomous capability to make decisions and execute on its own? But on the flip side, how do we know that this intelligence that we've created is going to act in its best interest and get through and move anything out of the way that prevents that from happening? I'm a huge fan of that movie I, Robot from Will Smith. Came out, I think, like 20 or 25 years ago, where they asked this exact question. How does intelligence stay well guarded with guardrails so that humans do not become susceptible to any dangers because the AI has some other alternative motive? That is a fantastic question. I don't know where society is going to go here in the future. The case law that exists today does not keep up with the pace at which this innovation is happening. And while I'm not an attorney, I've heard when you use ChatGPT and you ever fall into a legal matter that may subpoena or request access to those records, they don't fall under privilege. They don't get protected by HIPAA. They don't get protected by these legal frameworks that have been built to help protect privacy and the sharing of information. So it's going to be very interesting. I don't know what the future's like. I want to hope and say that people have good intentions. However, as we've seen over the years, decades past, that this theory has been challenged and has been changed. And I think what it's going to really require is going back to that first chapter, the commitment. Are we as a society committed to creating safe AI deployment at the expense of growth and profitability for the major corporations and these AI frontier model companies? Or do we value profits, revenue, and growth over safety? And Pooja, I will tell you, if history tells us anything, right, there's always been this need to focus on profits over safety, right? And there's a risk measure that happens. So I'm afraid of that stuff. I don't know what's going to happen. And if there's going to be AI overlords one day and we're just going to have to follow their rules, otherwise bad things are going to happen. I mean, there's a reason why these movies portray that happening, because it's a reality that may happen. So that'll be really interesting to see how these three laws of robotics apply to intelligence, especially since if you watch CES, that Vegas electronics show, everything was about robotics. And they're injecting LLMs and ChatGPT into robots that can move better than humans. It's going to be a very interesting decade for sure. Absolutely. Yes. So thank you for that question. I know who is asking it. So thank you for bringing that up on this. Much appreciated, as always. Yes, this book has 5 tools. Every chapter is a tool. And the only way you can see AI culture grow inside of your organization is by measuring the outcomes. So most organizations that talk about AI culture and AI implementation need some kind of measurement utility. And we can only be successful if there's some type of framework to get there. So the book includes tools that can help you quantify, and it tells you where you're at in your maturity process, and it suggests actions to take. So not only do we have that in the book, we spent considerable time, with the help of AI, of course, to develop digital versions of these tools as well that are very, very impactful to help you make that meaningful progress. So if you're an organization and you've never had an AI conversation and you're just struggling to get momentum, you don't know where to start, these tools will guide you through the process. There's a maturity framework that will tell you, all right, are you crawling, walking, or running with AI? How far behind are you from your peers? And what are some steps you can use to improve that AI culture inside of your organization? So, yes, this book includes tools for you to be able to measure where you're at today. And then it gives you a pathway to increase that capability and maturity inside of your organization. So, my recommendation is go through the book, use the chapters in order, and use the tools in order so that you know exactly first from a culture assessment, what's your baseline? And then it asks specific questions about your organization, who is involved, and your commitment to having these AI conversations that will lead you to become a cultivating organization, which is chapter 5, so that you can run and fly with AI and have adoption be at its highest level ever. And special shout out, by the way, from the folks that understand the Coke Zero jokes that I make online all the time. I had to have one of these for the launch just to kind of celebrate. So wanted to share that as well. Yep. Yes. So the 5 chapters of the book that we'll talk about right now, okay? There's 6 tools in the chapter, right? One is the culture assessment followed by 5 tools. Very, very intentional. And of course, from a branding perspective, the AI culture blueprint 5C framework is the reason we did this. The first chapter that I'm very, very passionate about, and the reason it's number one, is commitment, right? Can you commit to getting AI deployed inside of your organization? And as you'll notice in the chapter, for one, the culture tool just asks you not something that's a metric to measure, but you'll notice it says, hey, as a leader, I commit to blank, right? I commit to making sure that we can cohesively coexist with machines. I am telling you, here's how much money I spend on tools versus here's how much money I spend on culture. And most organizations, it's uneven. More on the tools, less or none on the culture. Whatnot, TikTok, you can get this book on aicultureblueprint.com. It's on Amazon. Pick up a copy. We're talking about specifics on the chapters of the books. So this first chapter on commitment is building that why statement and understanding, let's get real. Let's build a baseline. Let's cut the BS. Chapter number 2 is the communication part. This is where most organizations struggle, in my opinion. Everybody wants to make decisions around AI adoption. They want to make decisions around what tools to use. So, what I've developed for chapter 2 is a listening tour, and it's a toolkit to help you then build a council inside of your organization to collect feedback. Because AI usage is already happening inside of your organizations today. You just may not be aware of it, right? It may be happening because you've never given your team guidance on proper usage. You may have usage because you're not putting budget to getting the tools or you're not doing any training, or people just want to compete and execute at a high level, right? And they just need something to be able to do that. So communication is going to be absolutely key after you do the commitment, because that tool is going to help you then have this conversation so that AI adoption can happen at all levels. Do we want to run through the rest of the chapters, Pooja, or you want to stop here and ask some questions before we go further? Yeah. We all, as leaders and people, show up in society as superheroes. We want to be seen as capable, as people that can execute and do things. The biggest challenge that I see is leaders. I'm talking to all you leaders watching on all these platforms. I know you have to be superheroes inside of your organizations. And I know it's strange to lead with vulnerability, but that is the only way that you become a human to your staff. So when you have this vulnerability factor, you raise your hand and say, listen, I don't know what I'm doing. This AI stuff is overwhelming me. I don't know how to, use the tools effectively to make my job easier. When you show up like that, vulnerable, transparent, and you give people a chance to see the real you, that's the most important thing you can do from an adoption standpoint is by raising your hand and saying these three magical words. You ready? I don't know. So the sooner you can say, right, this vulnerability factor, I say in there, it says, are you willing to share your own AI learning journey, including uncertainties and mistakes? People embrace vulnerability and transparency in organization. It becomes the glue that holds the culture together. If you lead with vulnerability as a leader and you show up with leaving your ego at the door and you tell people, I don't know what's going on, you give your staff and your team the ability to then help elevate you and help carry that conversation. And I've worked really, really hard to try to be vulnerable myself, especially on LinkedIn, right? Just to share stories of what's happening with me. And it has led to some amazing conversations. So I think reading through this chapter and ending it with this vulnerability factor, Pooja, that is the reason why you can then get buy-in from folks because they see you as a human and not just a polished pre-rehearsed pitch from a deck that some AI consultant built for you. And it just gets people a little bit closer to you so that they actually take this AI stuff seriously. Yeah. Um, FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. In all the AI conversations I've had over the years, um, there's always this hesitation around how to have the dialogue. And I break it down into three levels of FUD. What is FUD? FUD is fear and uncertainty and doubt. It's not knowing the outcome of the action you're about to take and whether it's going to be valuable for you or not. And I think FUD happens to us in all parts of our life. Some medical diagnosis happens, there's fear, uncertainty, doubt around that, right? You have to give some presentation in front of a bunch of folks on a Zoom. There's some fear, uncertainty, doubt around that. You have it professionally, right? Whether making decisions at the office is going to be beneficial to the organization that you're operating in, or if your team is going to see you a certain way, right? There's fear in your personal life. Are you making the right decisions for your family, for your health, for your finances, right? For your relationships? Everybody carries this fear, this uncertainty, and the doubt. And you know what I've realized? There, a lot of that FUD is rooted in not knowing what is actually happening or not knowing enough information to make the right decision. Guess what? With AI, there's going to be a lot of decision making that's going to happen without knowing all of the information. We're entering uncharted territory. There's experimentation happening everywhere. There is no playbook that tells you exactly how you need to execute because you will have challenges if you have to wait for every piece of information in order for you to make a decision. So, fear is something that exists in all of us right now. And the sooner we can address that, whether it's personal, professional, or process driven or culture driven, that is a deep seated blocker for most organizations. And the fear is rooted in not knowing. So the more we can educate our teams and ourselves on what AI's capability is, the sooner we'll see the benefits of it, right? And that's really why fear, I think, we have to face it, can't run away from it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And the reason I bring this up in the book is I've had conversations with folks in companies of all sizes. And excuse my language here, but there are some folks that are assholes inside of these organizations where they want to ask for guidance. They want to ask for all the knowledge. They want to be able to talk to their teams, right? But then there's a bunch of ego assigned to it. Like, hey, I'm going to ask questions. So I give the illusion that I'm doing something about it. But then I'm just going to decide what I was going to decide anyway. And that does not create excitement for folks. So you as leaders really have to ask yourself, are you really willing to make meaningful change inside of your organization with the knowledge you collect from your staff? Or are you just crowdsourcing this information to create this illusion that work is being done? Um, you have to make that commitment. And if you're going to build an AI council, like I talk about in the book, which is a group of folks that represent all different types of perspectives inside of your organization, if you can build that council and as a leader, create that safe space to have those conversations, but then take that information and take action, that builds trust and momentum. The moment you collect that information, do not listen and make a decision the way you were going to originally, your team will see that. And you know this, Pooja, you've been inside of organizations. Trust is the most important thing. Move at the speed of trust is what I say for AI. And if you do that the first time, people will put their guards up. They won't share information. And then guess what? You're now playing whack-a-mole, figuring out how to get AI adoption inside of your organization. You're hiring expensive outside consultants that have to do that experimentation for you. And the adoption continues to fall flat. So, in my opinion, if you're going to be doing this, you're going to spend all this time going through the book, executing on culture, right? Finding the right tools. You have to listen to the people that you're going to involve in the process. Otherwise, don't waste their time, right? Don't bring them on board. Don't give them the autonomy to make that decision, and just decide what you're going to decide anyway and see how that works out. So you absolutely have to be willing to let go of the vine, as they say. Absolutely. Yeah. Mhm. Yep. Yeah. I started seeing patterns inside of organizations. There was just distinct perspectives that would show up to either an AI training that we were conducting or some type of decision maker or company leader that had to make the call on some type of AI initiative, or just in passing, just having a conversation with, different types of people within so many different types of organizations. I started seeing patterns and I started writing some of this stuff down. And I just, a lot of this book is just a culmination of my mental thoughts that I just started having before any type of AI conversation would happen. It was just like this voice in my head, right? So I started noticing people would show up either like, that they've been in the company a long time. We call them the guardians, right? Like they've been there 25, 30 years. They've acquired knowledge. They sit in leadership roles. They know their stuff, right? And for them to make decisions on for the company, it's predicated on safety and ensuring that the company minimizes risk. I saw that all the time. I'm like, all right, there's some veterans here that they understand it, but they're not going to just roll the dice with an AI tool and from there see what happens, right? So I saw guardians come up, very important because they're the ones that allow organizations to continue to thrive. I saw organizations also have um, every organization has like the lead person that is this role, which is a skeptic. It's even true to this day where there's folks that, they kind of like look at me like this, right? They close their eyes a little bit and say, all right, tell me what you're really saying. What are we really saying here? There's just skepticism naturally with any type of change. That's a thing that happens to most folks, right? That have never used the technology. There's skepticism. They need some proof before they adopt it. They need some validation and some trials before they make that decision, right? So skeptics start showing up, and those are the folks that I enjoy talking to the most, because if I can change the mind of a skeptic for AI usage, those are the ones that share this experience far and wide with their colleagues and their peers, right? So skeptics were very important. We had innovators also show up. These are the folks that are already using AI in your organization. They're not asking for permission. They're not going to ask for forgiveness either, because they see that there is AI usage happening in the world around them. And they want to try to adopt it as quickly as possible so that they can stay valuable to the companies that they work in. So innovators are the ones that you need to talk to help define strategy. Okay. And I know the senior leaders here, just because you've been working in an industry 30 years doesn't mean that you're the expert on how AI usage should happen. The younger generation, this new generation that's coming in, they have different perspective that is not rooted in calcified thoughts and preconceived notions that have happened over decades. Give them a chance, right? Just because of a lack of experience doesn't mean that they have a lack of capability. You got the practitioners. These are the folks that talk to your clients that are going to follow through and use whatever tool you give them access to. They're going to try stuff. They're going to innovate with the innovators. They're going to try things. They're going to experiment. They're going to fail. Those are the ones that are the testing grounds, the guinea pigs. And then you got the strategists here. The strategists are the ones that make the decisions. And Pooja, I noticed all 5 groups of these people coming into rooms at different times. And the sooner we can either and I hate putting people inside of buckets, because I know some people are going to be like, Sagar, I don't fit into any of those 5 buckets. Absolutely. You're very unique. And I understand that. This is just generally what I've seen in my experience. Of course, there's probably dozens of other groups I haven't thought of or considered, but this is what I saw without making it too complicated. What needs to happen is these groups of people need to be coached very differently. So if you're a CEO of an organization, you have a bunch of strategists and skeptics on your board or on your leadership team, you absolutely talk to skeptics very differently than strategists, very differently than the guardians. So this whole mindset of how you approach and talk to people and talk to them the way they want to be talked to is how you get through to them on a very, very important conversation such as AI. So chapter 4 is all about how do we elevate our staff that lead people with different types of personas to have these very challenging change conversations. And that's what this chapter goes into. And this chapter probably took me the most time, actually. Chapter 4 took me the most time because I kept going back and forth. I'm like, do I need to have more in terms of categories? Do I need to minimize it? Am I putting people in buckets that they shouldn't be in? And I start testing this stuff too. Like I'm using this stuff, guys. I'm using what I've written in this book in my AI consulting company, Spedge, which we launched a couple of days ago. It's been a crazy week. So really, really grateful that we're here today. But I've been using these tools. And it's interesting when we show up to AI calls, we kind of just categorize people. We're like, all right, here's the skeptic. Oh, we found the skeptic. We get excited because that's the person. If we can win them over, the other four categories, they're just so much easier, right? So that's why chapter 4, probably the most time consuming one for me, Pooja, was to figure out these different personas and how we articulate AI change to them.